can't always judge the quality of a race based on the margin of victory. There are several races out there where I can say, wow, that was a close finish, but boy, the rest of that race sucked. This was the opposite of that. The margin of victory was somewhere in the realm of 17 seconds, but this was the most competitive, exciting, and probably entertaining Mid-Ohio race of all time. I would hesitate, or not hesitate, to say that, because this was just a darn entertaining race, start to finish. It went caution-free, which was another big thumbs up, just in terms of race control. They didn't really have to, they had really one opportunity where they could have thrown a full course yellow. They didn't. And then the driving standards were just absolutely fantastic. I think Will Power said it after the race. The drivers are probably the best talent level they may have been in quite a long time, and certainly since Will Power has been racing. So yeah, fantastic race at Mid-Ohio, and I feel weird saying that because a lot of the times I'm always kind of poo-pooing Mid-Ohio and saying how they should move this race to Cleveland. They should still move it to Cleveland because I would buy a ticket then. This race didn't compel me to buy a ticket to Mid-Ohio, but it certainly lightened my perception of Mid-Ohio as a race, because this race didn't need any cautions to really shake it up, and at the same time, it was still entertaining. So let's talk about it. We had the start with Alexander Rossi starting on the pole position, and of course the lightning rod for IndyCar controversy immediately got some controversy going because he backed the field up on the start. A lot of guys were scrambling for position, trying to avoid running into each other, and I found it fairly interesting that race control took no action on this. Interesting, not really. I'm thinking that it was like a bad call. I think it was the right call, but I seem to remember that Will Power was lambasted a couple of years ago. I think it was St. Pete 2014 for doing a similar move on the start. Of course, what Will Power did was actually caused an accident, and I guess had Rossi backing up the field caused an accident, maybe we'd be talking about this a little bit differently. But regardless, Rossi was able to use that to his advantage and really struck out to a big lead early on. Now, this race was very much a strategy race, as all Mid-Ohio races tend to be. There was two distinct strategies on the table in terms of who was going to get the victory. And again, I think it was really going to come down to whether or not there was a yellow flag or whether there wasn't. As it turned out, there wasn't. So the strategy that was kind of the one that moved to the front was the two-stop strategy, and the only driver to utilize that was Alexander Rossi. Now, that was fascinating that drivers such as Scott Dixon, who we know are incredibly good at saving fuel, did not choose to go onto that strategy. Rather, they stayed on a three-stop strategy. And it was just very weird because there was points in the race, especially with the red and black wall tires. By the way, again, a shout out to Firestone. Really good job on the tire compound selections for Mid-Ohio. It really felt like the black tires and the red tires really had an effect on performance and thus added to the strategy of the race. Case in point, Robert Wickens had something like a 20-second lead at one point in the race, and it looked like he was maybe going to run away to victory. He might even have been able to leapfrog Alexander Rossi on a two-stop strategy, despite the fact that Wickens was on a three-stop strategy. Didn't work out. That was mostly hampered, or that effort was hampered by lap traffic. But we saw some great battling kind of in the mid part of the race when a lot of the strategies were starting to overlap. We saw Joseph Newgarden, who had actually was able to catch and pass Alexander Rossi before the first pit stop, which was a really spectacular move. We had seen that from him last year to win the race on Will Power last year. Kind of that sell him a dummy thing and then go to the inside into the 90-degree corner on the back straightaway. And then we saw Scott Dixon and Alexander Rossi get into it. That was very interesting because it was interesting to see, too, because they raced very fair. These are two championship rivals, and especially after this race, it seems like they've established themselves as kind of the guys who are going to race for the championship. We'll be talking about that later. But it was a really great duel between those two drivers. And then we saw the Penske guys get into it a little bit. But again, hard and fair racing. There wasn't a lot of running into each other during this race. And even, again, we've seen Newgarden make these kind of moves on Will Power before, or just his teammates before. be able to pull them off on the absolute razor's edge of being clean. And it was just, again, Newgarden and Rossi and Dixon and Wickens, I really do think that the talent level in this series is so high right now. I agree with what Will Power said at the end of the race, because I just think about this, and I'm just thinking about kind of how bright the future looks in terms of the driving talent in this series. There's so many great drivers. Let's talk about another one real quick. Sebastian Bourdais had trouble in qualifying, crashed on his outlap, started 24th in the field. Without a caution, he drove his way through the field, making some of the most spectacular passes we've seen. And again, we've seen this from Bourdais all year long. He seemed to be the only car on the track that was able to make the red tires last as long as the blacks, and that was an absolutely huge advantage. And again, Bourdais making incredible passes. Some of the outside moves that he was making were just unbelievable, and it was amazing the people he was making them on, like Ryan Hunter-Reay and Simon Pagenaud towards the end of the race. Let's talk about another guy who looked like he was going to have a very fantastic weekend, and it didn't work out. And in fact, it would have been the second great weekend in a row for Carlin Racing, who really is starting to look like they're starting to come into their own. And I would even think that they may be pretty strong at Pocono. They weren't bad at Indianapolis. It looked like, especially Charlie Kimball, had a pretty decent setup at Indianapolis. Pocono, while not entirely a similar track to Indianapolis, it's still a 2.5 mile flat super speedway. So we could see Carlin be fast there too. But Max Chilton was 6th. Got into Q3, the Firestone Fast 6, though it was aided by a red flag. He still got there. That getting there is half the battle. And it looked like he was very strong at the start of the race. He was able to hold off Scott Dixon for position early on in the race. But then, as he was struggling to get around Takuma Sato, still trying to keep Dixon behind him, he made a mistake. Stuffed it in a little too hard on Sato, caught the inside curb, and knocked Sato off, which garnered a drive-through penalty, essentially ruining his race and ruining what would have probably been the second big-time finish for Carlin, well up inside the top 10. And in such a competitive series with a new team, with a couple of drivers that certainly aren't, I would say in the top 10 of IndyCar racing, it's still a really good achievement for those guys to keep, pushing forward. And it really does look like things are starting to click for them. You would think that for next season, they're going to kind of stick to their guns and keep that team together, unless they've got a big free agent that they could pick up, because I think that Carlin's really starting to click, even with some of the pieces that, maybe some of the pundits maybe think aren't the best pieces in the entire world for going out and winning IndyCar races. So let's talk about the end of the race. There's really not a lot to talk about in terms of like on-track activity or on-track battles, but we had Alexander Rossi running away with it. An incredibly well-managed race. And again, it's his 4th win in the series, and it's all with the Napa car. He's won every single race with the Napa car. Hey, Napa, maybe, just maybe, come on full time, just fund all the races, and then Rossi will win all of the races for you. Yeah. Again, Rossi, when he's on, is so good at managing a race. But when he has those mistakes, like we saw at Detroit, and this is, again, something we're going to talk about here coming to the end of the video, is that you look at a Detroit mistake, and now you look at where he's positioned himself, being able to beat Dixon at Mid-Ohio. Now we're going to Pocono, where Rossi has traditionally been strong. Dixon, maybe not so much. Then you go into Gateway, where Dixon hasn't really shown a lot of speed on the short ovals. Rossi has. And then there's Sonoma and Portland, which are kind of up in the air. We certainly know that Dixon's strong at Sonoma. Portland, that's kind of the wild card. So you look at this, and it's not outside the realm of possibility that Rossi could still be in this championship hunt. But again, he's in that kind of hole that he put himself in coming out of Detroit when Dixon was scoring all those points. That was kind of when Dixon established himself as a championship contender. It's going to be a learning experience for Rossi. And also, I have to say, again, Robert Wickens. Wow, what a drive. What a drive. I mean, I don't know how many more times we have to say this, but he's established himself so well throughout this season. It continues to impress me, despite the fact that I know it shouldn't impress me. I know he was a huge talent. I mean, if you look again, and I know I mentioned, wow, it's good that Hinchcliffe got that win at Iowa because he really kind of saved face, with Wickens performing as well as he has. But Wickens has really, really turned it on. It's just really been incredible to see the performance out of that 6 Lucas Oil car that we really haven't seen from any of the other drivers that have driven it. So you look at that podium with Rossi and Wickens and Will Power, who I've barely even talked about today, but another solid drive from him, but it looks like he's probably out of the championship fight. We've got a very interesting championship scenario going into, I guess you could call this the IndyCar summer break, before we have the end of the year swing to close out the championship. So let's talk championship real quick. So I still think the odds-on favorite is Scott Dixon, but I mentioned at the end of my last review that after Mid-Ohio, we'd have a real good idea of where the championship hunt was going to be. I thought it was really going to be between Dixon and Newgarden. But again, Rossi has established himself as maybe not only the third place guy, but he's the guy who maybe has the best shot at taking down Dixon. Now, again, we got to look historically at Pocono. Newgarden and Rossi are much better at that track than Dixon. Could we see Dixon have a bit of a resurgence? Maybe. If it's a fuel mileage race, again, I said this about Mid-Ohio and I was proven wrong, but I think if it's a fuel mileage race, sort of like we saw at Indianapolis, where Dixon maybe won't be in the hunt all day long, but he may be able to get there towards the end, even if he finishes second or third. Let's say Rossi or Newgarden have trouble throughout the race. That's going to be a huge point swing in the favor of Dixon. But by the same token, if Dixon finishes like 12th or 13th, just being uncompetitive all day, and Rossi or Newgarden wins, that's a huge point swing in their favor. Again, I think going to Gateway, that's a track that favors Newgarden. Then you go to Portland, maybe that's a track that favors Rossi. And then you go to Sonoma, double points, unfortunately, that favors Dixon. So I think it's a 3-horse race. I don't think there's really anybody else who could possibly challenge at this point in the season. There's obviously the outside possibility of a Hunter-Reay or Power being able to do it. But again, I think it's between Dixon, Rossi, and Newgarden for the championship. So that would be certainly something down in the comments to let me know. Who do you think is going to win the championship? Because once we get done with the championship, there's even more stuff to discuss. So let's talk real quick, because it's really captured my attention recently. Silly season. And I've got an entire video coming on this very soon, but the Fred Watch is in huge effect. Apparently, Michael Andretti has put a deadline on McLaren and Zach Brown, whether or not they are going to give him an answer, whether Alonso and McLaren are coming next year. If they are, Zach Brown wants to hire Scott Dixon. Now, Robin Miller told us on the broadcast that Dixon's salary is somewhere between $9 and $11 million, or at least that's what's being negotiated with Chip Ganassi right now. There are 3 teams involved in those negotiations: McLaren, Andretti, Ganassi, obviously, who offered apparently $11 million according to Miller, and we've got Roger Penske in the mix as well. Some people were surprised by that, but to be honest with you, if you think about it, the best driver in IndyCar racing, of course, Roger Penske is going to be looking at that and saying, okay, how can we get this guy on our team? Money doesn't seem to be a whole lot of objects to any of these people involved, but I would say that if Alonso is the second McLaren driver, let's assume a McLaren happens next year. There's a lot of assumptions going on here. Let's assume McLaren happens. They want a 2-car team, and they want Dixon in the second car. We can only assume that Alonso is the first car. Alonso's salary, from what we know, that McLaren pays him directly, is anywhere between $20 and $40 million a year. I would assume he would not necessarily take a pay cut heading into next season, regardless of where he's racing. McLaren just wants him a part of their brand. So would McLaren really be interested in spending an extra $10 million or so on Scott Dixon? And you're looking at nearly $50 million. And this is astronomical money for this era of IndyCar racing to be talking about just on driver salaries. this is, I mean, this, if this is what's going to happen, if these two drivers end up at this team, this is some of the biggest paychecks we've seen in a very, very long time for again, one team. You're not even paying for equipment yet. You're paying for two employees. Now, are they two of the best drivers in the entire world? Absolutely. But this is F1 money. Again, we're talking here. It's kind of exciting and daunting that we're seeing this spending war with drivers. And then we talk about, well, if Dixon was to somehow leave Ganassi to go to Andretti, who takes his seat at Ganassi? There's talk about Alexander Rossi leaving. I would be very surprised at that, especially considering he's tied to a sponsor at Andretti. Would Napa go with him to Ganassi? What about PNC Bank? Are they tied to Dixon? Are they tied to Ganassi? Where are they tied? And then there's Ed Jones, who people have told me he's safe at Ganassi, so I'm guessing they'd be finding someone to pair with him. What about Robert Wickens? Would someone be willing to buy him out of his contract? We know Penske's interested. Could Ganassi look at him as a second driver for his car next year? What about Felix Rosenqvist? We've heard so much about him kind of in the background, and we heard about him last year as well when talking about Ganassi during the silly season. And then we've got the whole rumors about other teams partnering with Andretti next year. The Steinbrenners with Colton Herta. We just heard recently that Harding Racing is looking at partnering with the Andretti Autosport team. Apparently they're capped at 6 cars for next year, is the Andretti Autosport team. So I'm not exactly sure where all these cars are going to go. We've heard about Rahal expanding to 3 cars. I actually talked to Bobby Rahal about it at Lime Rock and asked him directly about the Steinbrenners. And he wasn't entirely sure whether or not the Steinbrenners are 100% serious yet. But then again, he could just not want to tell a fan about all his plans for next year. But it does seem like there's going to be a lot of cars next year, and there's still a lot of drivers and a lot of money out there that seems to all want to be in the series. I suppose that's a good thing, is it not? But it's certainly going to lead to a very awkward silly season. And here's another thing that I've heard, is that Simon Pagenaud's in a contract year at Penske. Some people haven't really mentioned that, and I'm not entirely sure it's 100% accurate, but if Pagenaud's in a contract year, that opens up a seat potentially at Penske if Roger wanted to bring some young blood in or looked at an opportunity like a Dixon or a Wickens, if he could bring them in. What if he brought in Alonso? Stranger things have happened. So yeah, I've got more videos coming on this. In fact, it's going to be a whole expose on the drama surrounding the McLaren IndyCar deal. Is it going to happen? Is Alonso coming regardless of McLaren? That's another thing that's possible. I've heard speculation that United Autosports can come into IndyCar because the McLaren board isn't interested in it. But Zach Brown has been adamant, and so has Mark Miles, that it's still on the table. Who knows? This is I thought last year's silly season was wild. This one's 10 times more wild, and we haven't even had a domino fall yet. So, lots to talk about. Let me know down in the comments if you got any speculation or any info. Let's freaking start a discussion. I know we didn't talk a whole lot about Mid-Ohio because even though it was a really entertaining race, it seems like the outside IndyCar sphere is a little more interesting to talk about at this time in the year. It's kind of weird. But yeah, an excellent race. So good job, Mid-Ohio. You put on a decent show. I liked it. Thumbs up. And also thumbs up for Alexander Rossi. It's always fun to see him win. I know I've kind of built him up as a black hat, kind of the villain of IndyCar, if you will, but he's fun to watch for that reason. He is one of the best drivers in the series, and he knows it. And so that's kind of exciting to watch. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Got lots of motorsport content coming. Hope you will subscribe for more, and we'll see you in the next video. Boy, it's going to be a long wait till Pocono. Oh yeah, I'm going to Pocono too. See you there if you're going to Pocono.